1930s were the most exciting and consequential decades, not just in physics, but in all of science. But the 1920s and 1930s were notable for something else, no less consequential and no less dramatic: the rise of Nazism in Germany and fascism in Italy. From the discovery of the neutron in the year before Hitler came to power in Berlin, some scientists were aware of the theoretical possibility that the massive energy wrapped up in the nucleus of the atom could be unlocked, but hoped against hope that it would never prove practical. And then, over Christmas, New Year, 1938-1939, on the very eve of war, 4 scientists from Germany confirmed that they had fissioned, the nucleus of uranium, the heaviest element in the periodic table and the most unstable. The possibility of nuclear weapons came a frightening step nearer. One German scientist, Werner Heisenberg, arguably the most brilliant of all, who had won the Nobel Prize in 1932, aged 31, was much later to say that had a handful of physicists got together in 1939 and refused to do any more work on nuclear weapons, there was nothing the politicians could have done, and the whole nuclear arms race would have been stillborn. Instead, that year, a very small number of highly trained individuals suddenly found themselves in possession of knowledge and skills that could, at least in theory, decide the outcome of war, should it come to pass, which seemed increasingly likely. What could be more dramatic than that? An idea so powerful that it could determine the outcome of a world war. Einstein himself was distraught. 6 years later, Einstein's remarkable insight was fully realized. On Monday, July 16, 1945, at 5:29 a.m., the first test of an atomic bomb was successfully carried out at the so-called Trinity site in the Alamogordo Desert in New Mexico. Though he was told the noise had been heard in 3 states, Leslie Groves, the general in charge of the project, insisted the test be kept secret. "Can you give us an easy job, General?" an aide remarked. "Like hiding the Mississippi River?" The very next day, President Harry Truman sat down for his first and only face-to-face meeting with the Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin in a suburb of Berlin near Potsdam. 3 weeks later, on August 6th, also a Monday, Einstein's idea was again deployed when Hiroshima was bombed. 2 days after that, on August 8th, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan. The very next morning, the Red Army's tanks rolled across the Manchurian border. These events were hardly coincidences. In recent years, the view has become established, among historians at least, if not yet the general public, that the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not needed to end the Second World War, but had another purpose. In some ways, it is surprising that this view is not more widespread. One early, distinguished skeptic about the bomb's use was General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force, who directed Allied operations in Europe against Hitler and was later President of the United States. At the height of the Cold War, and soon after his famous farewell address as president, in which he drew attention to the risks posed by the military-industrial complex, he recalled the moment when the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, told him that the atomic bomb was to be used against Japanese cities. During his recitation of the relevant facts, I had been conscious of a feeling of depression, and so I voiced to him my grave misgivings, first on the basis of my belief that Japan was already defeated and that dropping the bomb was completely unnecessary, and secondly because I thought that our country should avoid shocking world opinion by the use of a weapon whose employment was, I thought, no longer mandatory as a measure to save American lives. It was my belief that Japan was, at that very moment, seeking some way to surrender with a minimum loss of face. Admiral William Bull Halsey's Third Fleet was meeting almost no resistance as it bombarded Japanese coastal installations.